Lately, I've noticed a lot of new crocheters visiting the channel, which got me to thinking about everything I've learned over the years. Now, I've been crocheting, I'd say, off and on for about 30 years, but it's really the past 5 to 10 years that have really shaped the way that I see this craft. So I'm hoping even if it's just one little tidbit that you get from this video, it will help save you some time and stress as you go along on your crochet journey. Now this one may seem deceptively simple, but it plays such a big part in your project, and that's always leave a long tail for weaving in. This is so important, but maybe not for the reason that you think. Yes, it does keep your work really secure, but more importantly, over time, those ends do want to pop out with the wear and washing. It's just a given. This is going to happen due to the nature of working with yarn. When that happens, you'll want enough length to trim and tuck them back in. If your tail is too short, that is going to get harder and harder to fix. I have played yarn chicken way more times than I'd like to admit because I am notorious for this, and you'll see this in my videos. I don't always remember to leave a nice long tail. And while we're on that subject, weaving in your ends as you go saves so much time and stress. However, don't make this mistake that I used to always make. I would jump right into weaving those ends in, but so many times it would turn out that I'd made a mistake, and then it was such a nightmare to undo. So I found that it's much easier to wait a few rows, make sure everything is looking right and the count is correct, and then weave those in. Now there are many crocheters that recommend that you wait on the weaving in until after you've washed your piece because of the shrinkage factor. So a good compromise in my opinion would be to weave in as you go, however leave a little bit of a tail left over, then after you've washed it you can trim those ends. This is again where that long tail comes in really handy. Here is a really big one. This is going to make or break your piece. Your yarn choice matters. And we can talk about all different aspects of this, but mainly it is so important to pick the right yarn fiber for the job. You have 3 basic types: man-made, plant-based, and animal-based, and each one of them serves a purpose. That was my biggest mistake starting out. I would focus more on how it looked instead of how it behaved. Cheap yarn isn't always bad, and expensive yarn isn't always great. It's always about what's right for the project. And although that sounds like it could be pretty overwhelming, it's not. You can learn this as you go. Just pay attention to what's being recommended, whether that's in a video that you're watching or a pattern that you're following. And if you'd like to learn more about how to choose yarn for projects, please let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to do a video all about it. At some point, you're going to get bored with a project or life simply gets in the way. I've been there many times. And that's why I've learned to keep copious notes. And I have to say, I think I've talked about this one a lot. Just simply keep a little note, whether it's on your phone or on an index card, with the hook size you're using, the yarn, or any tweaks that you added to the pattern. These are really going to help you when you come back to it. You really think you're going to remember these things, at least I do. I really think I'm going to remember, and I never do. And this will transition really well to our yarn labels. Never toss your yarn label. Your yarn label is your golden ticket. It has all of the information that you need on there, but more importantly, if you attach the yarn to it, it'll save you so much time figuring out what yarn you have on hand, especially if you're like me and you're working multiple projects. My biggest mistake with this is that I get out of the habit of it and it always bites me in the butt. And now I'm stuck with yarn that I can't remember what brand it is. And it's not always that easy just to look at it and figure it out. So save yourself a lot of time and headache. Grab a strand of that yarn, attach it to your label, and put it in a safe place. I just keep mine in Ziploc bags, separated by brand. It's simple and it really does make a difference. This is a really important one, and it's more about your mindset. Everyone has an opinion, whether it's how to hold your hook or the best way to tension your yarn, just a general right way to do things. But here's the truth. What works for someone else may not work for you. So it's so important to listen to your body, assess your comfort, and experiment to find what feels best for you. This really hit home for me when I started my channel. I wasn't aware that the way I crocheted was different from other crocheters, and I thought I needed to change. But there is a wide variety of how other crocheters do it. So as hard as it is when you're first starting out to have confidence in what you're doing, if you are getting the results that you want and you're not feeling any stress in your hands or joints, then you're on the right track. And while we're on the subject of that, your tension is going to change with time. What you do now may not be the way that you do it in the future. I can look at old videos where I can definitely see that I have changed the way that I crochet, but it wasn't a conscious act. It just happened naturally from the doing of it, which is my next important point. As much as you don't want to hear this, you're going to learn so much more from the act of doing it than from watching videos like this. I know I get really excited when I can find that little tweak or hack that is going to make all the difference. But where do those come from? They come from doing. And that's what's so amazing. As you're doing it, this is when you're going to discover your own aha moments or little tweaks that are going to change everything for you on your crochet journey, simply by the act of doing. And my biggest mistake with this is when I leave it for a long time. So all those things that I learned, I forget. I'm in that boat right now. I've left knitting for a couple of years and I really want to come back to it, but it's like having to relearn all over again. So do your best to stay as consistent as possible and keep up with that note taking. Notes, notes, notes. As you're learning crochet, I would recommend that you don't get too comfortable with just one type of terminology. Learn to recognize US and UK terms. The biggest way to recognize the difference is UK terminology does not use the word single crochet ever. That is a clear indication that it's US terminology. Patterns and tutorials usually make it pretty clear what they're using. However, that is still one of my biggest mistakes that I still make to this day. If I'm rushing and not paying attention, I still accidentally go to what is natural to me, US terms. So just in case, always look for that little hint. Is single crochet in the pattern or not? So learning the terminology is really important, which leads to the other part of that, which is being able to read and understand patterns and charts. The biggest mistake I did was I went from one extreme to the other. I learned with written patterns. You're talking about 30 years ago where video was not a thing. So I went from that to modern day where video was full access. And I got so comfortable with visual learning, I forgot how to read patterns, which in turn has made it very difficult for me to write patterns. So really I'm having to go back to the basics. My point for you here is that all three serve a purpose. So if it's not making sense to you visually, you can then reference it in written form. And the best of all worlds is the chart. If you can read a chart, you're golden. Remember how I was talking about UK and US terminology? If you have a chart, you can clarify because charts are universal. And I do have videos on how to read written patterns and charts that I'll link to in the description below. And finally, here's the most important one. Crochet can be incredibly therapeutic. It helps with anxiety, keeps your hands busy, and even regulates the nervous system. But when we're learning, we often underestimate how long it takes to really get the hang of it. You know, there's this misconception that it should be easy because of that old stereotype that, crochet is just for grandmas. But the truth is, like any skill, it takes practice and patience. And this is one of the mistakes I've made along the way too. I want to know things instantly. And when it didn't click right away, I would give up. But if you do stick with it, something shifts. And that's when crochet becomes not just a skill, but a source of comfort and calm. I don't know what it is about crocheting, but it is something that just brings me so much peace and joy. And I really want that for you as well. So if you enjoyed this video, a like is always appreciated. And I have one more tip for you. I did a video about this recently, about something that was life-changing on my crochet journey. If you missed that video, I highly recommend you watch it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you over there.